All right, it's Thursday, and that means it's college football picks, analysis, angles. Jimmy Ott along with Paul Stone. Let's get right to it. Our best bets are doing well. Again, a very good week last week, 5-1 with the picks. I had to try and squeeze in that money line on Pitt. We'll get to Pitt a little bit later. Let's stay on the East Coast right there. Go to College Park, Maryland, where Washington making one of those coast to coast trips in the Big Ten. That is pretty common these days. A little bit in the ACC as well. We'll get to one of those a little bit later. But Paul, you're looking at Maryland versus Washington. This is Washington, Malik Washington for the Terrapins against the Washington Huskies. Huskies and Damon Williams, their uber talented dual threat quarterback. You look at the box score and say 18 for 22. What happened? Why didn't they throw more? Well, Ohio State spied on him whenever he tried to run a read option. They were all over him, and they sacked him 6 times. So he had 13 rushes for minus 28 yards. Keep in mind, it's not like the NFL college stats. And I know a lot of you college football enthusiasts know this, but the rushing yard sacks are factored in to the rushing yardage. So Washington a little bit just could not get it into the end zone against the Ohio State Buckeyes. And, with the young quarterback, the freshman quarterback, making his first true road start. And that place was jumping early in Seattle, but Ohio State just too strong there. Paul, you looking at the home dog here. And that's a little bit of a theme here with our picks this week, but home dog Maryland Terrapins and their outstanding in-state true freshman quarterback, Malik Washington.
Yeah, Maryland, of course, off to a 4-0 start, Jimmy. As you mentioned, Malik Washington, he's been very impressive, a true freshman. He has started from day one for the Terrapins. But other than a 27-10 road victory over Wisconsin as a double-digit underdog, not a whole lot of meat on the bone in Maryland's schedule to this point. Their other three victims besides Wisconsin, Florida Atlantic, Northern Illinois, and Towson of the FCS level. But we're going to find out a whole lot more about this Terrapin football team the next 2 Saturdays after they host Washington this week. They will be hosting Nebraska next Saturday. So we'll get a better read on these Terrapins these next 2 Saturdays. You look at this game, and while Maryland is off a bye, which I think is a great advantage at this point, you've played in some cases 5 games, in other cases, 4, and you started practice back in early August, and things have kind of gotten monotonous. You're a little bit tired, not only physically, but mentally. And I think there's a great advantage to this early midseason bye. But while Maryland was relaxing and watching games on Saturday, Washington, as you mentioned, hosted top-ranked Ohio State this past Saturday, a much-anticipated contest. The Buckeyes ended the Huskies' 22-game home winning streak, which was the second longest in the nation behind Georgia's, I believe, which was also ended. But the week prior to playing Ohio State, Washington had a pretty emotional game, not a hotly contested game, but another emotional game, the Apple Cup. They had traveled to Pullman, Washington, to play rival Washington State. They coasted to a 59-24 victory in that game. But still, they've played Washington State and Ohio State in back-to-back weeks. And so now, off back-to-back emotion-packed contest, Washington has to travel across the country, across 3 time zones to play an undefeated and rested Maryland team that's had an opportunity to heal some of those early season bumps and bruises and kind of hit that mental reset button. So this sets up really nicely for Maryland. Washington also, they've got some injuries on defense. They lost a linebacker who was a returning starter for the season. He didn't play last week against Ohio State. Their standout cornerback, Takario Davis, he didn't play last week either. He has not played since week 2, but there are some rumblings out of Seattle that they expect him to possibly play this week at Maryland. He's been dealing with a rib injury. You just look at all the totality of circumstances, mostly based on the situation, mostly based on the favorable spot for Maryland. And I like the Terrapins. I like home dogs, especially kind of this time of year. So give me the Terrapins plus 6.5 over Washington.
To your point, Paul, Washington was ready to play. Like, I mean, they were ready. They just didn't have the Jimmys and Joes in this one because, I mean, they get the goal line stance. early in the game, about the 2 yard line, the fourth down, turned over and downs, got a lead, driving again, but then faked a field goal, and it was not one of the prettiest fakes that you've ever seen. So, no, they were fighting, they were competing, and they had the running back had a lot of burst in the kick return as well, the kick return game, but just. I'm just wondering if they can get back off in a long flight as well to College Park against a rested team in the bye. Get to some of those buy teams, those spots as well, a little bit. Log into your Bet Rivers app each week to opt into a 3-pack of college football profit boosts, including a live boost, a same game parlay boost, and a boost to use however you please. See the app or website for more details from our friends over at Bet Rivers. Did I mention Pitt last week? Did I mention Pitt? It was up 17-9, and we are just rolling. Everybody's got one of those friends that marked that one a W in the book early, huh? I mean, he's spending the money, he's buying in more chips at the craps table, whatever. You've had it. They blow that 17-0 lead and then build a 27-17 lead at the half. Within 5 turnovers, including, and a couple of these were in the first half too, a fumbled punt in the punt return game, a fumbled attempted punt from the punt team, the punter itself. That's two that out of your special teams that really don't help a lot. How about Eli Holstein, who was eventually benched in this game in the fourth quarter? Now he's going to start, and I'm looking for a big rebound out of him, but he's got first and goal at the 4. First and goal at the 4 in a tie game and throws an interception he's trying to hit the back of the backfield and just didn't protect the ball. And it gets picked to avoid taking a lead there. And then at his own territory on 2nd and 17, he forces one in to set up Louisville's game-winning touchdown. I mean, he's benched. Now, Narduzzi says he is going to start. So, knowing Holstein the way I do, this is a low point. Man, adversity, I expect him to compete in a big way against Pitt at home. Some people say, well, yeah, haven't you? They'll cross off a team with bad beats and things like that. Unless there's never been a bad beat you couldn't have hedged out of. And you may have seen this one coming. And I did as Louisville started to cut into that second half lead as well on the Louisville money line. But Pitt minus 6.5 at home against BC. I'm just looking for the Panthers to bounce back, especially at the trigger man in Eli Holstein.
Yeah, these are two desperate teams, no doubt. Jimmy, Pitt's now dropped 2 straight. They lost their previous game before Louisville to their rival West Virginia. They're in the renewal of the backyard brawl in Morgantown, so 2 straight losses. BC, on the other hand, they've now lost 3 straight, and these teams also looking, trying to avoid digging a big hole in conference play. Pitt, first of all, trying to avoid an 0-2 start in ACC play. BC trying to avoid an 0-3 start. So these teams kind of have their backs to the wall. You mentioned Eli Holstein. You got to expect that he'll come out with a big-time performance. He has thrown 5 interceptions this year in just 114 attempts. So he needs to take care of the ball. What really gives me a good feeling, I don't think I'll be involved here, but what gives me a good feeling about your position here is the fact that Desmond Reed, who is really the centerpiece of Pitt's offense, he didn't play last week against Louisville. All indications are that he'll be ready to go this weekend against BC. I mean, last year, almost 1,000 yards rushing. He had 962 yards rushing, caught 52 passes out of the backfield. So that shows you the productivity that he provides there for the Panthers. He is listed as the starter on the depth chart. So, it's an interesting game. Both these teams back against the wall. Be interesting to see how this one pans out.
5 turnovers for Pitt and 3 more failed fourth down attempts. That's a total of 8 to just 1 for Louisville last week. Players who place a qualifying same-game parlay of at least $10 on eligible NFL or college football games will receive 1 standard entry into the weekly Squares game. Winning standard squares will be awarded a prize of a $20 bonus bet. See the app or website for more details. Let's get to one of your picks, Paul. Then talking about the one of those trips, Cal and Duke in Berkeley. So, Berkeley's only a 10-minute drive from Oakland, but a world apart. But it is a little bit of a homecoming for the much heralded quarterback Darian Mensah from San Luis Obispo. I've done games at Cal Poly Slow, so a little bit of a 3.5 2-hour drive up the coast for some of his family. So that will be a little bit of a homecoming. But this is Cal traveled last week and got the win at Chestnut Hill against Boston College. Sagapolatelli bounced back. Remember, they were shut out by San Diego State. San Diego State won 6-3 this past week. What about them and their defense this year? So not going to kill them for getting shut out at Snapdragon Stadium. But here's Mensa, who is doing his thing, 315 a game, 13 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions, a really strong 6 quarters, too. It was a kind of a low point in that NC State game in the first half where the $7 million quarterback, $7 million 2-year deal quarterback, they ran the ball near midfield on 3rd and 11, just straight up the middle. No draw, just kind of gave up. Like, man, you didn't pay that kind of money to bring this kid in to do that. But he rebounded in a big way. They rolled against NC State and they rolled against Syracuse, and Ricky Collins had to make the start for Angeli, the backup quarterback for Syracuse. So may have caught Syracuse at a tough spot. Cal, home dog here. And this is the ESPN. How about Duke's local time? In Durham, they'll be kicking this thing off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern their time. So it used to be Pac-12 after dark. It's now ACC after dark. From Berkeley, Duke, and Cal. You're looking at the home dog again here, Paul.
Yeah, I tell you, I love me some ACC. You think about the Atlantic Coast Conference historically, you got three teams there in that so-called research triangle. Duke, North Carolina State. I think Duke and North Carolina have made the drive from between Durham and Chapel Hill. It's about 10 or 11 miles. Cal and Duke, though, separated by a scant 2,800 miles. So it's a different day and a different age in college football. Nothing says ACC football like Cal and Duke kicking off at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, as you pointed out. You know, Duke's been the better team, I think, on paper to this point. Again, this is a situational play. As we get into the middle of the year and kind of the meat of the schedule and teams start getting a little bit weary, I start looking for these types of points, these types of situations, rather. Cal, you know, you alluded to it, they laid a stinker in week 4, committed 3 turnovers en route to that 34-0 shellacking at the hands of San Diego State there at Snapdragon Stadium. But otherwise, you know, the Golden Bears, they've been solid, not spectacular, but they defeated Minnesota by 13 points at home. And then, as you also mentioned, traveled across country this past weekend, upset Boston College 28-24 as a 6.5-point road underdog. Both teams are playing for the 6th straight week this Saturday. But again, we've talked about the scheduling dynamics and the travel and so forth, and they certainly benefit Cal, in my opinion. Duke could certainly be a weary traveler. Not only are they traveling cross country to play a game, as far as their body clocks are concerned, that starts at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but they're playing their 3rd road game in a 21-day span. So they've been on that plane a lot. They've been traveling a lot. We mentioned the body clock component of it. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Cal's quarterback, his name, the true
Agapolitelli.
freshman.
Come on, Paul. It's not hard.
Some people are calling him JKS, and I
That's
can say
fine.
JKS pretty good. So I'm going to say JKS until I have some time to work on it. But he's been quite impressive to date. He's
Yeah.
played well. Much like Malik Washington at Maryland. He's come in at Cal and started from day one, been the guy and played well and looks the part. And then there's also this aspect to it that I'm really drawn to. Justin Wilcox, since he came to Berkeley prior to the 2017 season, he has been a moneymaker as a home underdog.
Yeah.
This is the role that he has thrived in. Cal, under Justin Wilcox as the home underdog, 14-5-1 against the spread, taking the Golden Bears +3 over the Duke Blue Devils.
Yeah, Sagapolatelli, the Oregon transfer, and he makes things happen, man. He is tough to deal with. I tell you what, some nice, impressive young quarterbacks in a couple of these games we're talking about with Cal and Duke. We're talking about sort of, the MLB does their All-Star game. It's kind of an All-Star game with Maryland and Washington with the futures game with those two young quarterbacks who really look the part. So some really good young quarterbacks that we're talking about. Let's go to one of my next games, and we're going to go to another home dog. Let's go to West Lafayette, Purdue, with that big old drum that they have. Love that stuff. So the Barry Odom tried to tell us He tried to tell us. A lot of us are scratching our heads, like, "What are you doing, man? You could get a better job than Purdue. This thing is real." Paul, I know what you in the Power Four, you had them 63 or 64. I mean, right at the bottom of the weakest, the Power Four teams in in college football. I'm not sure we have North Carolina, but they got to be close to there as well. But Barry Odom tried to tell us we're going to be better than people think. And it wasn't the transfer portal. He inherited a quarterback in Ryan Brown who's throwing for 260 a game that gives him a chance to move the ball. They moved it consistently against Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame is moving the ball at will against a lot of people right now. CJ Carr's numbers are sick. I would like Ryan Brown to clean up the interceptions a little bit. 60s and 5 interceptions. So this is his third year with the Purdue program in West Lafayette. But this is more of a fade of a spot here for Illinois. Tough spot of you want to talk about emotional roller coaster. We picked Illinois last week against USC at the points. They win it outright. But I mean, to get drilled the way they did against Indiana and come back and win on a last second walk-off field goal against USC. I mean, now they have to travel to West Lafayette in a spot that they're looking to exhale when they looked at this spot in the schedule before the season even started. And what did you say about those buys? Teams coming off the buy, Paul? I think it applies here as well. The Boilers are coming off of a buy as well. Maybe a little extra time for Brown to look at some film, do some film study, and maybe clean up those interceptions as well. Spot here, I love here. Home dog, Purdue, the Boilers, plus 9.5 available right now at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This spot just so hugely favors Purdue. You've got an Illinois team off back-to-back big games. You mentioned that played Indiana a couple of weeks ago, and then USC, and get that last second field goal for the victory. And now they have to travel to West Lafayette, as you mentioned, to play a Purdue team that wasn't circled on everybody's calendar prior to the season, you might say. But this is you got to give it to Barry Odom. This guy obviously can coach a little football. He's at a talent disadvantage in this conference, but they have been, maybe not ultra competitive, but they put up a fight, and they've been pretty competitive on offense. They're averaging right around 30 points a game. So they have some offensive firepower, if you will. The number here, the point spread, the one thing that kind of concerns me a little bit, or I would be with you on this one, is a couple of weeks ago when Purdue hosted USC, they closed as a 20.5 point home underdog. Now they're only getting 9.5 from an Illinois team that's pretty comparable to USC. So that's a little bit concerning. But for me, it would be Purdue or anything. If it gets above 10, I might join you here. But it's going to be interesting to see how much gas Illinois has in the tank, so to speak, in West Lafayette this weekend.
Well, I think that the power rating, and I think, have you adjusted your power rating of Purdue since the season started?
Certainly, yes,
Yeah.
certainly that accounts for some of that difference for sure. Yeah, they played 2 weeks ago though, so
Uh-huh. No, but I'm just saying, since before the season, preseason power ratings
yeah,
to now. I mean, Purdue's a little bit better. They're no
yeah.
world beaters by any stretch, but they're better than we
No, they're
thought.
without question. That I
Yeah.
think they're better than everyone thought,
Yeah.
except for maybe really, big time fans of the program. If you're looking at it impartially from a distance, I think everybody expected Purdue to be not nearly as competitive as they have been. Their power rating has to be, not looking at it right now, but just off the top of my head, probably 5 or 6 points better
Yeah.
than it was in the preseason. And certainly due to that offense, and you can score some points, you can stay in games. So, this is, it's not
And I
obviously not a marquee game, but it'll be a quite interesting game, especially for you with a few dollars riding on the outcome.
Oh yeah, I hope and chalk early dogs late. See a dog like this, I think there might be some tens that pop on Saturday morning. So just to kind of keep an eye out for that. I lean on you for your power ratings, Paul, because you do such extensive work on the off season. So much, football is foot your football work is done way before football ever kicks off, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm curious about another one of your shifts in power ratings preseason to now with the Army, with Army, because man, this defense, what is going on with this Army defense? UAB hosting Army here. Army laying 7 on the road in Birmingham against Trent Dilfer's all offense, no defense team. Both of these teams, all of college football, in the 200s in scoring defense. I know that's hard to do when you're an option team. I'm sorry. I mean, when you're one of the few schools that's running the ball and running the clock, God, that's a lot. A similar game was played against Army's main rivalry in Annapolis with UAB, and UAB was a big dog in that game. We love the over, we love the team total over, and so. But UAB right there went toe to toe with Navy in Annapolis, and I'm wondering how much you've shifted Army. You've knocked them down preseason power rating to where they are now, and where you have them compared to where Navy is right now, because UAB gave Navy all they could handle there. Now they get Army at home. Maybe Army just not quite up to the level. My eyeballs tell me they aren't of what they've been the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously losing Bryson Daly, kind of almost a generational quarterback's gonna hurt. There's gonna be some drop off at that position naturally because he was statistically such a presence and also his leadership. But I don't think and they also I'll back up a little bit. Not only Daly, but they lose their top defensive player. He goes in the portal and goes to Georgia, and then Udo, their top running back, goes in the portal, goes to Arizona State. So they lose arguably the three best players in their program, and two of them they weren't anticipating perhaps losing, but that's today's college football. Army has certainly dropped several points. I thought they would be better. They beat Kansas State, upset them as a 17-point road
Right.
underdog, and if they didn't win that game, they'd be 0-4. With everything else being the same, lost to Tarleton State, a good FCS team in Tarleton State, but still lost that game as about a 2-touchdown favorite. So it's been a struggle for Army to say the least. And looking at this game, Army going to UAB, obviously a man's not going to get rich, at least over the last few years, making many wagers on the UAB Blazers. But sometimes as a college football handicapper, you got to hold your nose and kind of grab a ticket on the ugly dog, so to speak. And that's what I'm going to do this Saturday when UAB and their third year head coach Trent Dilfer take on Army. You look at the last 3 seasons, 2.5 seasons rather, since Dilfer showed up in Birmingham. UAB against FBS opponents only 6-19 since falling 2 weeks ago to Tennessee, 56-24 there in Knoxville. They host Army. They're going to be a 7-point home underdog, as you indicated. So why in the world would I suggest risking hard-earned pre-tax money on UAB, considering their recent track record on the gridiron? Let me count the ways. I'm going to start with one way, one that we've kind of talked about, one of those reasons. And the fact is, Army's just not nearly as good as last year's team. And that was a team last year that flirted briefly with a spot in the 12-team playoff. But as I said, the 1-3 on the year could be 0-4, just not the same football team. And secondly, and this is tied to the first reason, they're just not doing a good job of protecting the football. Dwayne Coleman, there's been another guy play some quarterback too. They have just ball handling's been poor. They've had 7 turnovers in their 4 games, so they're averaging 1.8 giveaways a game this year. Last year, they only averaged 0.7 giveaways and ranked in the top 10 nationally. So they're not taking care of the football. And then this is kind of a fundamental handicap or a statistical handicap where you look at one team's strength versus another team's weakness. And that's what we have in UAB's passing game versus Army's pass defense. Historically, even when they're good, the service academies, because of the athletes that they have, they are going to be most vulnerable in the secondary, in the back of the defense when they're trying to recover, when they're trying to cover rather receivers in some cases that are just way more athletic than they are, bigger, faster, you name it. They just have a physical advantage. You look at the service academies through the years playing Notre Dame and see how many yards Notre Dame's passed for in those games and how many points they've scored and so forth. So you have an Army team that doesn't really defend the pass very well. They give up 8.1 yards per pass attempt. And then you have a UAB team that throws the ball all over the yard and do it pretty effectively. They're obviously not any good on defense, but they throw 64% of their offensive plays. They average over 344 passing yards a game to rank nationally in that statistical category. So I think UAB is going to throw the ball on Army. I think they're going to keep it close. They don't have to win for us to get the money, and I think they could, but I like UAB +7 over Army Saturday in Birmingham.
Yeah, Jalen Kitna, the senior quarterback, coming all the way from the state of Washington to play a ball for Trent Dilfer with the Blazers here. So the Blazers plus the 7, 2-2 against the 1-3. Is that crazy? Army, they're one win this year at the Little Apple against Kansas State. So Kansas State got in for us last week though, with their first cover of the season. Speaking of first covers of the season, we're looking for some of that out of the Clemson Tigers. So you look at the preseason rankings, and well, there's always a top 10 team that's going to finish unranked. Well, this year's candidate, that would be the Clemson Tigers. Is anybody more upset, pissed off, just I mean, the fan base, we know that, but nobody has fallen below expectations like this year's Clemson Tigers. So, Dabo Swinney, we could say they were a little bit overrated. That's obvious. You know, Klubnik has had his struggles, okay, but we've seen him play pretty good football in the past. But I know one thing. Then you have the North Carolina Tar Heels, and I mean, Gio Lopez, their starting quarterback, is barely throwing for 100 yards a game. Clemson's much more battle tested here on the road here in Chapel Hill. Enthusiasm is pretty low in Chapel Hill with the first year coach in Bill Belichick. They just don't have players. He didn't forget how to coach. I mean, this is about the Jimmies and Joes. And if anybody is looking to take out some frustration, it will be the Clemson Tigers. No, Clemson laying 14 on the road. What the hell are you doing? Well, this is where they might just unload the can on Clemson and unload some of their frustrations. There's no comparison. Clemson may be overrated, but Clemson's personnel is still pretty good, and especially against North Carolina. Like I said, North Carolina's offensive numbers. I mean, they are. It's pretty rough, and and you even saw the opening game at Labor Day night, that standalone game on prime time, Labor Day night, that Monday night, kind of wrapping up the first 5-day full weekend of college football. They just kind of were handing the ball off. They were just kind of gate seated. They just were ready to get the game over. So 14 on the road kind of goes against all of our home dogs, so to speak, with this. It's kind of the theme of this week's best bets, which have been pretty good as of late. I'm going to lay the chalk on the road and go with the Clemson Tiger. Buy low spot, we like to call it, maybe here with Clemson. I don't know if they're going to win 7, 8, 9 games this year, maybe 6, but I think they are way better than the North Carolina Tar Heels, Paul.
Yeah, this is a North Carolina team that really hadn't shown much fight to this point, to be blunt about it. And during the offseason, I wasn't the only one, but I certainly preached far and wide that my expectations were quite low for Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels in 2025. But frankly, they've been even worse than I anticipated to this point. They've played 2 Power 4 schools this year, those being TCU, as you mentioned in the opener, and then Central Florida. In those 2 games, they've been outscored by a combined 82-23. They were down by double digits at halftime in both those games, so not really all that competitive, never really in the game down the stretch. So, man, they just don't have it together right now. You never know how things will be as we progress through the season, and certainly as Belichick and company go into year 2 and so forth, it might get better. But right now, it's just not very good. And Gio Lopez, on top of that, in their loss to Central Florida a couple of weeks ago, he suffered a lower body injury, and expectations are he could play against Clemson, but I would say it's probably less than 50-50. But if Clemson's ever going to get well, I mean, they'll do what they can probably to get a big victory if they're in that situation, because it's been such a disappointment. A Clemson team that not only certainly had designs on the 12-team playoff, they were considered a national championship contender. And man, they are one of the season's head scratchers, because the way they were playing at the end of the year, Klubnik was, man, he was spot on. I went to the Clemson Texas playoff game, and he was throwing the ball, especially in the second half, in extremely tight windows, tremendous arm strength. Just really looked at the top of his game. Had a lot of most of those players back, so everything pointed towards a big time year, and it just hadn't come to fruition. But it's going to be Clemson or nothing here. I can't blame you at all for fading North Carolina. I made the mistake a couple of weeks ago. It wasn't a large wager, but I, for some reason, thought North Carolina plus, I believe, 7 at Central Florida was a good idea, and I'll do no more of that. So,
You do
but
your power ratings by conference, Paul, and I know the ACC. You had Wake Forest. Wake Forest is better than North Carolina. You've had to move them ahead. I mean, they took your Georgia Tech to overtime. This past Saturday. So I would be surprised if you still had North Carolina above Wake Forest.
yeah, I'm sure Wake Forest has had a North Carolina. I'm going to do a better job and bring my come equipped with my power ratings from here on out, so I can respond to these questions with some clarity and understanding. But yeah, Wake Forest has been it's been a slight surprise. Very disappointing last week for
Yeah.
the Demon Deacons to jump out to a double-digit lead against Georgia Tech and just not quite be able to hang on. But yeah, for Wake Forest, I'm just certain maybe a point or two higher than North Carolina. Been a very disappointing showing by the Tar Heels to this point.
It's one of you have those games, you're going to have a special season. We talk about those top 10 teams that, one or two of them finish unranked at the end of the season. We talk about unranked teams who finish in the top 10, and that's the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. And if you're going to have one of those special years, you got to escape to get that W. And so they score first in overtime to get a 7-point lead. Wake Forest scores on the first play in overtime, 24-yard touchdown run. The back got hurt on that play. They go for 2. They rolled the dice, and the quarterback just didn't have anybody open. Finally, just throws it into coverage, and they bat it down. And Georgia Tech escapes. We know about Georgia Tech. We've been picking them since July on this show, on this podcast with with Haynes King and that team. But boy, that coach does a heck of a job. Every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Sports Better's Paradise Sports Rush. College Sports Rush YouTube channel. I'm Jimmy Ott for Paul Stone. We will see you on Tuesday. Good luck to you guys this week in college football.